You've probably taken your kids to the doctor for a routine checkup, right? The kind of visit where you're in and out, no big deal. Maybe it's an annual checkup, or a quick eye exam at school. You walk in, sign a few forms, and everything seems fine. Well, imagine this. You're sitting in a quiet waiting room, your child happily flipping through a magazine or playing on their phone, unaware of what's about to unfold. You think you're in for the usual, a simple check of the eyes, a little conversation with the pediatrician, and then you're off to the next thing. But what if the one thing you think is just a routine visit turns into the discovery of a family secret that could change everything? I know you're curious now. You probably feel that little twinge of suspense in your chest, wondering, what could possibly happen in an eye exam? Well, let me tell you, this story is not about a typical checkup. It's about uncovering a truth that's been hidden in plain sight, and it all begins in a place we least expect it, the very thing that seems harmless, normal, routine. I'm here to take you on a journey that you won't forget. So stick with me, because this story is going to leave you shocked, and yes, it will make you think twice about every routine moment you experience with your family. Now, imagine this scenario. You're sitting in that same waiting room with your child, nerves starting to bubble up because the last time they had an eye exam, things didn't go as smoothly. Maybe your child's been struggling with reading or squinting at the TV a little too often. You chalk it up to their age, or maybe a little too much screen time, but then the nurse calls your child's name. The routine begins first, the chart with the big E, then the strange contraption that makes you feel like you're about to step into a sci-fi movie. It's all the same, but for some reason, today feels different. You don't know why, but something's about to happen. Something that will forever alter your understanding of your family, and more importantly, of yourself. The doctor enters, and it's the usual small talk. How's your kid doing in school? Any changes? Any recent health concerns? Everything seems fine, but the moment the eye chart test begins, things take a strange turn. The numbers aren't right. The letters are a blur in your child's vision. It's not just a little bit off, it's drastic. The doctor asks a few more questions, tries some more tests, and then, the truth starts to unfold. That's when the first bombshell is dropped. Your child's eyes reveal something you never expected. And it's not just a vision issue, it's something much deeper, something that's been hidden for years, something that your family has unknowingly carried around with them. At this point, I'm sure you're asking yourself, what kind of family secret could an eye exam uncover? What could possibly be tied to something as simple as vision? The answer, my friend, is more complex than you could ever imagine. This isn't just a health issue. It's a revelation that's going to make you question everything you thought you knew about the people you love the most. It's going to challenge everything you believe about family, trust, and what we inherit, whether we like it or not. I'm not going to spoil all the details right now, but let me just say this. The truth is, sometimes the smallest things can reveal the biggest secrets. Sometimes, all it takes is a single moment, an innocent test, an overlooked detail, a forgotten question, and suddenly, everything you thought was solid crumbles. What you thought was a routine, a simple moment, ends up shaking the foundation of your life. And when you realize the truth, it might just feel like the ground is slipping from under your feet. I can hear you asking, how is this even possible? How can an eye exam lead to such a shocking revelation? Well, that's exactly what we're going to uncover today. I'm going to take you through the twists and turns of this unexpected journey, and trust me, by the end of this video, you will have answers to questions you didn't even know you were asking. You'll find yourself looking at your own family through a different lens, wondering what hidden truths could be lying just beneath the surface of your daily lives. I'm not here to just tell you a story. I'm here to make you think, to make you see things in a new way. By the time we're done, you're going to be questioning everything you know about your own life, about your family, and about the seemingly insignificant moments that actually hold the power to unravel it all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we dive deep into the mystery of what really happened that day, let's start with what we do know. The exam started like any other. Your child sat there, following directions, answering questions, looking at charts. But as we soon found out, there was more to the story than we could ever have imagined. So, what happened in that exam room? What was it that the doctors uncovered that sent us all into a whirlwind of emotions and confusion? And most importantly, What secret had been lurking in the shadows of our family, waiting to be revealed? I know you're dying to find out, but I promise, this is only the beginning. Stick around, because this story is going to get more intense. You won't believe the twists that are coming. And the real question isn't just what secret was uncovered, it's how the discovery changed everything. Trust me, the answers are not what you expect. Keep watching because this is a journey you'll never forget. Now, take a deep breath. You're about to step into a story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Ready to find out what happened? Keep watching, because the truth is, the days leading up to the eye exam unfolded, life felt strangely ordinary. For the past few weeks, things had seemed calm, almost too calm, like everything was finally settling into place after months of chaos. There were the usual concerns, of course. With the school year in full swing, the kids were juggling homework, sports, and social drama that came with growing up. But in the midst of it all, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. No warning signs. No red flags. So when the appointment was scheduled, it felt like just another task on a long list of to-dos. It was supposed to be a quick in and out, one more thing to check off before the weekend. But as we all know by now, that's not how it played out. The first hint that something was off had come the week before, when my child, let's call them Jamie, had started complaining more than usual about headaches. Nothing too extreme, but frequent enough to catch my attention. As a parent, you get used to the occasional complaint of my head hurts or I don't feel well, but this time, there was something different. Jamie wasn't the type to whine over small discomforts, so I chalked it up to something trivial, maybe a long day at school, or a bit too much screen time. But the complaints persisted, and Jamie started squinting at things more, rubbing their eyes as if the world around them was blurry. That's when I knew it was time to make the appointment, even though deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more going on. Now, looking back, I realize how many small details were slipping through the cracks. Jamie had been spending more time with their cousins recently, playing outside late into the evenings. There had been whispers, not to me directly, but I heard enough to know that there had been some tension among the family. I didn't think much of it at the time, just typical teenage drama. But now, I can't help but wonder if those subtle shifts in the family dynamics, the way certain relatives seemed a little more distant, were somehow connected to what was happening. It's hard not to start questioning everything when the unexpected happens, when the safe little bubble you've been living in suddenly bursts. Then there was the matter of Jamie's father, my husband. He'd been distant, to say the least, in recent months. Our relationship had always been solid, built on years of shared history, but something had changed. He was working late more often, spending less time at home, and when he was around, he seemed distracted, like his mind was elsewhere. I told myself it was just stress from his job, that he was overwhelmed by the pressures of work. But there were moments, brief flashes of something, when I wondered if there was more beneath the surface. I tried not to dwell on it, convincing myself it was just the demands of adult life catching up with him. But in the back of my mind, the questions lingered. Was it just work, or was there something deeper, something about our past, that was finally starting to unravel? And let's not forget the timing. It was just a few days before the eye exam when I stumbled upon an old family album while cleaning the attic. Among the photos was a picture from years ago, back when Jamie was just a toddler, of my husband with his brother, smiling on a family vacation. But there was something strange about the picture. In the background, standing just outside the frame, was a face I didn't recognize. A man, looking back over his shoulder with a look that sent a shiver down my spine. I brushed it off as a random acquaintance from a distant memory, but the image kept nagging at me, haunting my thoughts in the days leading up to the appointment. Why had I never seen this person before? Who was he? And why did I feel like I'd seen that exact face somewhere else recently, though I couldn't place it? These thoughts circled in my mind, unanswered, as if they were pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit together. And then, the day of the eye exam arrived. The tension in the air was palpable, though neither Jamie nor I could have known how much the day was about to shift the course of our lives. Jamie had been a bit on edge, anxious about the results, but there was a hint of optimism too. They were always a little worried about their health, always anticipating the worst, something I had learned to manage over the years. I reassured them, as any parent would, telling them it would be just fine, a simple checkup. We hadn't expected to uncover anything more than a new prescription, maybe a recommendation for glasses, something ordinary. But I couldn't shake the strange feeling that something was building, something I couldn't see but could feel just beneath the surface. The doctor's office was quiet, too quiet. As the tests began, everything seemed normal at first. The classic vision test, the asking of questions, the familiar instructions to read the letters on the wall. But then, the doctor asked Jamie to do something different. Instead of the typical follow-up questions, he asked Jamie to read something off a screen. The letters were blurry, yes, but this time, the doctor's face shifted just slightly before he made a note on his chart. There was no alarm, no sign of panic, but a subtle change in his demeanor. He asked Jamie to come back for a few additional tests. And in that moment, I knew something was wrong. But what could it be? The questions that followed were even stranger. The doctor asked Jamie if they had noticed any other changes in their body, things that felt off, unusual. My mind raced. Could this be something serious? Was it just a vision issue, or was there something more, something the doctor wasn't saying? I tried to stay calm, but the unease began to grow. As we left the office, the weight of the unspoken words between us felt suffocating. The doctor had promised to get back to us with the results within the next 24 hours, but it was the way he'd said it, the way his eyes lingered on us as we left, that left me with a lingering sense of dread. It wasn't until the next day that the bombshell finally dropped. When the phone rang, I didn't expect the news that followed. The call wasn't from the doctor's office, no, it was from a clinic I didn't recognize. The receptionist's voice was polite, professional, but there was a coldness to it that unsettled me. "I'm calling regarding your child's recent eye exam," she began. "There's something we need to discuss. It's urgent. Please come in as soon as possible." Urgent. I felt my stomach twist into knots as I hung up the phone. What was going on? What could possibly be so urgent? The unease I'd been trying to shake off suddenly felt like a full-on panic. There was a part of me that didn't want to go back to that clinic. I didn't want to know what they'd uncovered. But as the hours ticked by, I knew I had no choice but to face whatever was coming. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that this visit would reveal something that would not only change Jamie's future but shatter everything I thought I knew about my own family. Something was hidden. And this was just the beginning. It's coming, and it's going to leave you speechless. The next few days felt like a blur. I went to the clinic for what I hoped would be a simple follow-up appointment, but the moment I walked in, something didn't sit right. The receptionist was unusually stiff, almost robotic, as she led me to a small, dimly lit room in the back. There were no smiles, no small talk, just cold professionalism that put me on edge. As I sat down, waiting for the doctor, my thoughts were racing. What had the doctor found that was so urgent? Was it something serious with Jamie's health? Or was it something else, something darker? The waiting felt unbearable, each minute dragging on like an eternity. When the doctor finally entered, he was accompanied by a woman I didn't recognize. She had a stern face, a clinical air about her, and a look in her eyes that sent an icy chill down my spine. She introduced herself as a specialist, someone who had been brought in for further analysis. Her words were calm, but I couldn't ignore the underlying tension in the room. The doctor seemed unusually nervous as he gestured for me to sit down. He asked me to remain calm, but his tone suggested that wasn't going to be possible. He turned toward the woman, and the two exchanged a brief, uncomfortable glance. Then, the bombshell. The doctor explained that they had found something in Jamie's eye exam that warranted further investigation, something that wasn't just related to Jamie's vision. The details were vague, and as he spoke, I felt more and more confused. There was a condition in Jamie's eye that seemed unrelated to any typical vision issues, a condition that could have been inherited. But what struck me the most was the doctor's next statement: "This isn't just about genetics. There's a possibility it's something much more complex. Something that could affect your family in ways you haven't considered." I tried to stay calm, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. What was he talking about? And why hadn't they mentioned this sooner? He asked me to schedule another appointment for more tests, but I had this nagging feeling that there was something they weren't telling me. I left the clinic in a daze, my mind spiraling with questions. What had they found? Was Jamie in danger? And why did it feel like I was being kept in the dark? That night, I tried to talk to my husband about it. But he wasn't himself. He was distracted, distant as usual, like he wasn't even really there. I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more than he was letting on, that he was hiding something from me. The way he avoided eye contact, the way he seemed to be fidgeting with his phone constantly, it was almost as if he was waiting for me to ask the wrong question, one that would set off a chain of events he wasn't ready to deal with. I confronted him, as gently as I could. What's going on? Is there something you're not telling me about Jamie's condition? About the family? His reaction was swift, defensive, and completely unexpected. He shut down, almost as if he were shutting me out completely. You're overthinking it, he said, his voice tight. It's nothing to worry about. Just trust the doctors and leave it at that. The way he said it, though, didn't sit right with me. The more I thought about it, the more his words felt like a warning. And the more I wondered if there was something he was desperately trying to hide. The following days brought more confusion and frustration. I went back to the clinic for Jamie's follow-up tests, but when I arrived, the clinic was oddly quiet. The usual staff seemed to be absent, and the atmosphere felt off. As if something had shifted in the air. The nurse who greeted me had a strange look in her eyes, and when I asked about the doctor's report, she hesitated. The doctor's not in today, she said with an unsettling calmness. We're unable to provide any new information at the moment. Maybe you should come back another time. It felt like a brush off, but there was something deeper, something unspoken, that made me feel like I was being actively discouraged from pursuing this further. But the real shock came when I tried to access Jamie's medical records later that week. I logged into the clinic's portal, hoping to get some clarity on the situation, only to find that key documents that had been there just days ago, had mysteriously disappeared. I couldn't believe it. I refreshed the page, checked my inbox for emails, but nothing. There were no notes, no test results, no follow-up information. It was as if the clinic had erased any trace of the exams and tests Jamie had undergone. I tried to call, but the line was constantly busy, and when I did manage to reach someone, the receptionist simply told me that there were no available records for your child at this time. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut. The further I dug, the more I was being pushed away, as if someone powerful, was trying to bury whatever was uncovered in that eye exam. But who? And why? I thought back to that strange man in the photo I had found in the family album, the one who had haunted my thoughts for days. Who was he, really? And why had he been so carefully hidden from me? My mind was racing, but every lead I followed seemed to hit a dead end. I knew then that I had to do something. I couldn't let this go. Jamie's health, my family, my entire life was being manipulated, and I wasn't going to let anyone sweep it under the rug. But just as I was preparing to confront the clinic, I got an unexpected visit. It was my brother-in-law, my husband's older brother. I hadn't spoken to him in months, not since that awkward Thanksgiving dinner when old tensions resurfaced. He was always a bit of an outsider, someone who never quite fit into the family's inner circle. But there he was, standing at my door, with a look of urgency in his eyes. I know what you're doing, he said before I could say anything. And you need to stop. It's not worth it. His voice was calm, almost eerily so, but there was a coldness in his eyes that sent a chill down my spine. I asked him what he meant, but he wouldn't say anything more. You don't want to know the truth, he warned. Trust me, some things are better left buried. What did he know? And why was he warning me to stop digging? His words were a direct threat, wrapped in concern, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper behind his sudden appearance. Something about the way he looked at me, something in his voice, made me question everything. Was he trying to protect me, or was he part of the cover-up? I didn't know who I could trust anymore. As I stared at him, the weight of his words hanging in the air, I realized something. The truth was slipping further and further out of my reach, and the deeper I went, the more dangerous it became. But I couldn't stop now. I had to know what was going on, even if it meant uncovering secrets I wasn't prepared to hear. But just as he turned to leave, something strange happened. The doorbell rang. And when I opened the door, there was a package waiting for me, no return address, no note. Inside the box was a single photograph, the same man from the family album. But this time, written on the back of the photo was a message: "You're closer to the truth than you think." It was a clue, but who had sent it? And why? The question hung in the air, unanswered, as I stood frozen in the doorway, realizing that the mystery was far deeper and far more dangerous than I could ever have imagined. I stared at the photograph in my hands, the faded image of the man from the family album, the mysterious figure who had been lurking in the background of a memory I had never truly understood. His presence had unsettled me then, and now, seeing the photo again, my heart raced. The message written on the back, "You're closer to the truth than you think," felt like a taunt. Whoever sent this knew exactly what I had been trying to uncover, and they knew that I wasn't backing down. But who were they, and what did they want from me? More importantly, how did they know so much about what was happening with Jamie? It was clear that the stakes were much higher than I had realized, and now, the game was taking on a much darker tone. The next day, everything seemed to spiral even further out of control. I was still reeling from the photograph when I received a call that would send a new wave of uncertainty crashing over me. It was my sister, Claire, Jamie's aunt. I hadn't spoken to her in a while. We were close growing up, but the years had created distance between us. Life happened, people changed, and we lost touch. She had always been the level-headed one in the family, the one who kept things grounded. When she called, her voice was shaky, which immediately put me on edge. "I need you to listen to me, and I need you to listen carefully," she began, her words slow, deliberate. "I don't know what's going on, but I think you need to stop. This whole thing, it's bigger than you think." I tried to calm her down, but she kept interrupting me, as though something was eating at her, something she was holding back. She explained that she had received a similar photograph, the same man, the same message, just days before mine. But that wasn't the worst part. Claire wasn't the only one. A few other members of the family had received strange, cryptic messages too. Some got notes, others got anonymous phone calls, but they all had one thing in common: the warnings. Stay away from the truth. It's not worth the risk. Don't dig any deeper. What was happening? Why were they all being targeted, and why was this mystery spreading like a virus through my family? Claire was insistent that I stop investigating. "You don't understand, they're all connected. And if you keep going, you could be putting yourself and Jamie in real danger. Please, just let it go," she pleaded. I had always trusted Claire, but her voice, the fear in it, made me hesitate. I knew something was off, but now, it felt like the entire family was being silenced. It wasn't just about Jamie anymore. It was about the family's past, the skeletons in the closet that no one had dared to talk about for years. Could Claire really be right? Was I diving into something far more dangerous than I had ever realized? But just when I thought I had a grip on the situation, another piece of evidence surfaced. I was looking through old family records, trying to make sense of the mystery, when I stumbled upon a will that had been hidden away in a dusty corner of a file cabinet I'd forgotten about. It was from my husband's side of the family, dated nearly 20 years ago. At first, it seemed like an ordinary legal document, but as I read through it, my eyes caught something that made my blood run cold. There, buried within the legalese, was a clause that I had never heard about before. In the event of an undisclosed heir, the estate will be redistributed accordingly to reflect the correct lineage. What did that even mean? An undisclosed heir? It didn't take much to put two and two together. Could this be connected to the strange man in the photo? Was Jamie somehow tied to this hidden part of the family's past? I couldn't help but wonder if this was what had been buried all along, the truth that had been kept from us. The truth that everyone, from Claire to my husband, was trying so desperately to keep buried. But what was the connection? And why was it so important to everyone involved that Jamie not uncover the truth? I felt as though I was standing at the edge of a cliff, with each new piece of evidence threatening to send me tumbling into a world I wasn't prepared to face. As the days passed, the tension continued to mount. Every phone call, every visit from a family member, felt like another thread pulling me deeper into a web of deceit. It was clear now that not everyone in my family was as innocent as they appeared. My husband, despite his attempts to brush everything off, was acting more suspicious than ever. I began noticing things, small, unsettling things that I had ignored before. The way he became defensive whenever I mentioned the eye exam, the way he seemed overly eager to avoid talking about his family's past. I couldn't help but wonder, was he involved in keeping this secret? Had he known about Jamie's connection to the estate, to the hidden heir? Had he been part of the cover-up all along? And if he was, what did that mean for Jamie's future? But as I sifted through these questions, I received another call that turned everything upside down. It was from the same mysterious clinic that had been handling Jamie's eye exams. The voice on the other end was calm, too calm. "We need to speak with you," the receptionist said, without providing any further details. "It's about your child's test results." I felt my stomach drop. Why were they calling again? And why now, after weeks of being pushed away? I was hesitant to go back there, especially after the strange behavior of the staff, but there was no choice. I had to know what they were hiding. When I arrived at the clinic, I was immediately ushered into a private room. The doctor who had initially conducted Jamie's eye exam was there, along with the mysterious woman from the specialist team. But there was something different about the atmosphere now. It felt more intense, like they were preparing to drop a bombshell. I could see it in their eyes, the way they exchanged glances. This wasn't just about Jamie's health anymore. This was about something far larger, something that had been set into motion long before I even realized. The doctor began speaking in a hushed tone, his words carefully chosen. "There's been a mistake. Something in the tests was overlooked." I felt a knot tighten in my chest. What did he mean? "It's not what you think," he continued, his voice barely a whisper. "There's a connection. A link between your child and something that should have been kept hidden." His eyes darted to the woman standing beside him, her face unreadable. "But now that it's out, there's no turning back." Before I could react, the woman stepped forward, holding a file in her hands. It was sealed, but the look she gave me said everything I needed to know. They were about to reveal something that would shake the very foundation of my family. But just as she opened her mouth to speak, the door slammed open, and a figure I didn't recognize walked in, my husband's brother, the one who had warned me to stop digging. The same man who had mysteriously appeared at my door days before. "Get out," he said, his voice cold and demanding. The tension in the room snapped as the air grew thick with unspoken threats. He looked at the doctor and the woman with a terrifying calmness, his eyes filled with a quiet authority. "It's time to end this." I didn't know what was happening, but one thing was certain, everything was connected. And if I didn't act fast, I might not be able to stop whatever it was they were trying to bury. The clock was ticking, and the truth was slipping through my fingers. But who could I trust? And more importantly, was it too late to turn back now? I could feel the weight of the unanswered questions pressing down on me. The secrets were closing in, and there was no way out. That I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted irreparably, that the moment I had crossed into unknown territory, there was no going back. As much as I tried to convince myself that I was just overreacting, deep down, I knew I was in over my head. The clinic's cryptic warnings, the mysterious photographs, and the tense exchanges with family members had all pointed to something bigger, something darker, but it wasn't until that evening, when everything changed, that I realized how truly dangerous this situation had become. The night was heavy with a strange stillness, a sense of foreboding that seemed to permeate the air. I had just put Jamie to bed and was sitting at the kitchen table, going through old family documents and photographs, trying to make sense of everything. I hadn't heard from Claire or anyone else for hours, which only added to my unease. There was something about the silence that felt unnatural, as if everyone was waiting for something to happen, for the other shoe to drop. The longer I stayed in that house, the more I felt the walls closing in. Every creak of the floorboards, every shift of the wind outside made my heart race. I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was being watched, that someone was lurking just beyond my line of sight. And then, the phone rang. I jumped at the sound, my pulse quickening as I grabbed the receiver. It was Claire's voice, but something was off. Her words were frantic, breathless. "You need to listen to me. They're watching you. You're not safe. You have to leave right now. Take Jamie." And the line went dead before she could finish. I stared at the phone in disbelief, my mind racing. Who was watching me? Who was she talking about? I couldn't shake the raw fear in her voice, but there was no time to think. I grabbed my coat and rushed upstairs to check on Jamie, but when I opened the door to her room, my stomach dropped. She wasn't there. Panic set in as I ran through the house, calling Jamie's name, my voice growing more desperate with every passing second. The house felt eerily quiet, as if it had been hollowed out, and for a moment, I thought maybe she had gotten up to play or had fallen asleep somewhere else. But deep down, I knew this wasn't that simple. The sinking feeling in my chest told me that something far more sinister was at play. I checked every room, every closet, but there was no sign of her. My hands shook as I dialed my husband's number, but it went straight to voicemail. He wasn't answering. Where was he? Where was my child? Then, just as I was about to lose it, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The front door, my mind hadn't even registered it before, but now, it stood wide open. The wind whistled through the cracked doorframe, and the night outside seemed to swallow everything in its wake. My heart stopped for a moment. Someone had been here, in my house. Someone had taken Jamie. My head spun as I bolted toward the door, but before I could even step outside, I froze. In the dim light of the porch, I saw a shadow move, darting into the alley behind my house. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I instinctively ran after it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. But as I rounded the corner, I saw nothing, just the empty street stretching out in front of me. There was no sign of anyone. No sign of Jamie. I stumbled back, overwhelmed with fear and confusion. I didn't know who to trust anymore. Was this part of the conspiracy? Had someone from the family orchestrated this, or was this something even more terrifying, something beyond what I had ever imagined? Was Jamie just a pawn in a much larger game? The feeling of being trapped, of being hunted, clawed at me, and I knew I needed answers, but I wasn't sure how much longer I could stay in one piece. I had no choice but to go back inside and gather my thoughts, trying to think through the chaos. Just as I stepped through the door, a figure stepped out of the shadows in the hallway, and I nearly screamed. It was my husband's brother, the one who had warned me to stop digging. His face was pale, and his eyes were wide with a strange intensity. "You're in too deep," he said quietly, almost apologetically. "You have to stop now. It's too dangerous. They'll kill you and Jamie if you don't leave." His words sent a cold wave of terror through me, but I could barely process them. "What do you mean? Where is Jamie? What have you done?" My voice cracked, barely a whisper, as I tried to keep my composure. "What's happening?" He shook his head, his jaw tight. "It's not just about her, or you. It's bigger than you know. You're asking questions that no one wants answered. You're stirring up something that's been buried for a reason." His voice dropped to a low, almost inaudible murmur. "You've already seen too much, and now they'll come for you. You can't fight this. No one can." I was shaking now, not from the cold but from the realization that I was no longer just uncovering hidden truths, I was in the middle of a war I didn't even know existed. This wasn't just about a medical condition or a hidden heir. This was about power, about control, about forces so entrenched in my family's history that they had stayed hidden for generations. But why? What was so dangerous about the truth? Before I could press him further, his expression changed, his eyes darted toward the door, a flicker of fear crossing his face. He reached out, grabbing my arm and pulling me away from the hallway. "You need to go now," he said urgently. "You're not safe here. They're already watching." But it was too late. There was a loud, unmistakable sound, a car screeching to a halt outside, the unmistakable sound of tires tearing across the pavement. My heart pounded in my chest as I peered through the window. A black SUV was parked in front of the house, its engine running. I couldn't see who was inside, but the cold, gut-wrenching feeling told me that whoever they weren't here for a friendly chat. The shadows inside the car seemed to move, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. These were the people Claire had warned me about, the ones who didn't want the truth to come out. I barely had time to process before the front door burst open with a force that shook the walls. I spun around to see my husband standing there, his face pale, his hands trembling. "Get in the car, now," he said, his voice low and urgent. "I don't have time to explain. Just trust me." The urgency in his voice was enough to make me hesitate for only a split second before I bolted for the door. I didn't know who to trust anymore, whether this was a last-ditch effort to protect me or a dangerous game to keep me in the dark. But I had no time to think. I grabbed Jamie's things, my heart racing, and ran for the door. The black SUV idled outside, its ominous presence casting a shadow over everything. As we sped away from the house, I glanced at my husband. His face was drawn, his eyes locked straight ahead, but there was a coldness in him now that I hadn't seen before. Was he truly trying to protect me, or was he part of the web of deceit I had been trying to unravel? The questions kept coming, the answers slipping further from my grasp. And as the SUV sped into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the true danger was just beginning. Whoever was behind this, they were closing in, and I was running out of time to as the days wore on. The sense of urgency only grew stronger. The sense of paranoia was creeping into every corner of my life, every phone call, every glance exchanged, every shadow in the corner of my vision. I couldn't escape it. Jamie had been safely tucked away, hidden from whatever dangers were chasing us, but with each passing hour, the question of why we were running only grew more urgent. What had we stumbled into? Was there really a hidden air? Or was this just the surface of something darker, more twisted than I could have ever imagined? It was in the middle of one restless night, when the weight of the silence seemed almost suffocating, that I made the mistake of thinking I had everything figured out. After all the cryptic messages, the mysterious figures, the strange behavior from my husband's side of the family, I thought I understood what was happening. I believed that I had finally uncovered the heart of the mystery, something about a family secret, a hidden legacy that someone was desperate to keep buried. But that night, everything shifted in an instant, and I realized how wrong I was. It was late, and I was alone in the living room, staring at a pile of old documents. The feeling of being watched had returned, stronger than ever, but this time, it wasn't just paranoia. I could almost feel the weight of someone else's gaze, like a pressure on my skin. I tried to push it away, focusing instead on the stack of papers in front of me, but my mind kept drifting back to Jamie. What if I couldn't keep her safe? What if we were too far in, too entangled in whatever this was to ever escape? My thoughts were interrupted when I heard the soft creak of the front door opening, just the faintest sound. My breath hitched in my chest, my eyes darting toward the hallway. And then, I saw him. It was my husband's brother, the one who had warned me about going too deep. He had been distant, his earlier warnings lingering in my mind. But there was something in his eyes now that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. He wasn't the same man who had urged me to stop, to turn back. This was someone different. A person with a purpose. He stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I could feel my heart pounding, my breath catching in my throat. "I need you to listen," he said quietly, his voice strange, colder than I had ever heard it. I was so lost in confusion, my thoughts swirling, that I almost didn't catch the subtle shift in his words. "Listen to what?" I asked, trying to mask the growing sense of dread in my voice. "I wasn't supposed to tell you this," he continued, his eyes scanning the room as though making sure we weren't being watched. "But now you're in too deep to walk away. You need to know the truth before it's too late." He paused, as though weighing something inside himself, and then his next words struck me like a bolt of lightning. "The family secret, what you think it is, it's not what you've been led to believe. It's not about money, or some hidden heir, or some long-lost legacy. It's about Jamie." I stared at him, trying to comprehend what he was saying. My mind raced. "What are you talking about?" I demanded. "You're saying the truth has been hidden all along, but now you're telling me it's about Jamie? What does that even mean?" He took a step closer, and I noticed a subtle shift in his demeanor. There was an almost imperceptible flicker of guilt in his eyes. For the first time, I saw something different in him, something fragile, like he was on the edge of a breaking point. "You don't understand," he said. "You're looking at this from the wrong angle. The family secret is Jamie's secret, and you've been walking right into a trap. The person you trust most, the person you think is protecting you, has been hiding this from you all along." I couldn't breathe for a second, the weight of his words suffocating me. My thoughts scrambled. "What do you mean? Who's been hiding this? Who can't I trust?" He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper, as though saying it aloud would make it too real. It's your husband. He's the one who's been pulling the strings all along. The things that are happening now? They're all part of his plan. The room seemed to tilt around me. I felt like I was falling. Everything I thought I knew, the people I had trusted, the relationships I had built, everything was crumbling in an instant. My husband. The one person I thought was standing by my side, protecting me and Jamie. He was the one behind all of this. But before I could react, before I could even wrap my mind around what he had just said, the door to the living room opened again. This time, it wasn't just my husband's brother standing there, it was my husband himself, his face a mask of barely contained emotion. I froze, my breath caught in my throat as I turned to face him. You didn't tell her, did you? My husband's brother said, his voice rising in an accusatory tone. You didn't think she'd find out this way. I watched the exchange, the tension building with every passing second. My husband didn't answer right away. He just stood there, his eyes locked on mine, his face a mix of anger and something else, something I couldn't quite place. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, almost regretful. I didn't want you to know, but now you're already too far in. It's time you understood everything. My heart was pounding, the words they were saying crashing over me like waves. I couldn't process it all fast enough. The secrets, the lies, the cryptic warnings, it had all led to this moment. And the truth, it seemed, was something I couldn't even fathom. Jamie, my daughter, was at the center of it all. But how? What was she to them? Why was she the key? And why had my husband, the person I trusted most, been the one orchestrating this twisted game? I felt my knees weaken, my world tilting as the floor seemed to fall away beneath me. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the gravity of the moment held me in place. Nothing was making sense. The last few months, the threats, the whispers, it was all a facade. But for what? What was the endgame? Before I could process another thought, my husband stepped forward, his hand resting gently on my arm. I didn't want to do this, but you need to know something. There's no turning back now. The truth isn't just about the family. It's about Jamie. About her future and about the power she holds. We're not just protecting her. We're protecting all of us. The silence hung heavy between us as I tried to grasp at the words, trying to piece together the puzzle, but every new piece only seemed to twist the story further, making it more convoluted, more impossible to understand. Was this really the truth, or was this another layer of deception? And if Jamie was at the center of it all, what was her role? What was she? In that moment, I realized one terrifying thing. I had no idea who I could trust anymore. And the people I had relied on the most, the ones I thought were my family, might just be the very ones I needed to fear. The weight of the situation had become unbearable, and the pressure I felt, like a vice closing in around me, was starting to suffocate every thought, every breath. I stood at the center of it all, caught between a desire to protect my daughter, Jamie, and the gnawing compulsion to uncover the truth, to finally understand what had been hidden from me all these years. My mind was a swirl of confusion, anger, and fear, and every step I took seemed to lead me deeper into a maze I couldn't escape. Every question I asked only seemed to reveal more layers of lies, and yet, every truth I uncovered made the situation even more dangerous. I could feel the walls closing in, and no matter how hard I tried to hold it together, the gravity of the choices ahead of me was too much to ignore. The stakes had never been higher, and the fear of losing everything I held dear had become a constant companion. The night was heavier than ever, the house too quiet, the kind of silence that seemed to hum with a dark energy. The air felt thick with the weight of everything that had happened, and the knowledge that there was no way out. I couldn't turn back now. There was no going back to the life I had before, no pretending I could just stay on the sidelines, unaware of the dark web that had been spun around me and my family. I had to make a decision, but the path forward was unclear, and every option felt like a betrayal. It all came to a head when I received an unexpected call, a call that would change everything. It was from Claire, the one person I had trusted to help me make sense of this tangled mess. But her voice, when it came through the line, was strained, urgent, almost unrecognizable. You need to listen to me. They're coming for you, she said, her words clipped, frantic. I could hear her breathing hard, as though she was trying to speak without being overheard. You have to choose now, either you walk away, take Jamie and disappear, or you stay and fight for the truth. But be warned, if you stay, there will be no going back. You'll lose everything. You'll lose her. I stood frozen, the phone pressed to my ear, my heart pounding in my chest. The words "you'll lose her" echoed through my mind. I didn't need to ask her to explain. I knew what she meant. Jamie. My daughter. The one thing I couldn't lose, the one thing I would do anything to protect. But the truth was hanging out of reach, and every part of me screamed to know it, to finally piece together this puzzle that had been haunting me. But how could I choose? What was I willing to sacrifice? The choice Claire presented was an impossible one. On one hand, there was the safety of Jamie, the future I could still protect if I walked away and never looked back. I could take her, leave the city, and disappear, live in peace, cut ties with everyone and everything I had ever known. But would that truly be safety? Would I ever be able to live with the knowledge that the truth had been kept from me, that I hadn't fought to uncover the things that could change everything? Or on the other hand, if I stayed, if I pushed forward to unravel the mystery, the dark forces I was up against might destroy us. My family, my future, everything I had worked so hard to build, gone in the blink of an eye. I was paralyzed, caught between these two impossible choices, unable to make sense of which one was the right path. I thought about my husband, the man who had once been my partner, my rock, the one person I believed in completely. He had been part of this secret world, part of the web of lies and deception, and now I was left questioning whether he had ever really been on my side. Was he truly trying to protect me, or was he part of something far worse, something so much darker than I could even comprehend? The thought of confronting him, of accusing him of the things I had learned, made my stomach twist in knots. But if he was involved in this, if he was hiding something so massive, so dangerous, then I needed to know the truth. I couldn't go on living in ignorance. I had to face him. But how could I confront him? How could I ask him the questions that had been swirling in my head without tearing apart everything we had built together? Every part of me, every instinct, told me to tread carefully, that any wrong move could push him further away, could send us both tumbling into an abyss from which we could never escape. And yet, in the pit of my stomach, I knew the longer I stayed silent, the longer I waited to ask, the more dangerous it would become. The more these forces would close in around us until there was no room left to breathe. The morning after Claire's call, I found myself standing in the kitchen, trying to summon the courage to speak the words I needed to say. My hands were trembling as I poured myself a cup of coffee, the silence of the house pressing in on me. Jamie was upstairs, sleeping soundly, unaware of the storm that was brewing just outside her door. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone again. This time, I dialed my husband's number. It rang for what felt like an eternity, but when he answered, his voice was different, flat, controlled, like he was expecting this conversation to happen. "We need to talk," he said, his tone calm but edged with something that made my stomach drop. "I know everything," I replied, my voice shaking despite my attempts to stay composed. "I know what's going on. I know about Jamie. I know about the family secret, about you." The words tumbled out in a rush, as though saying them aloud would somehow make it all real, would give me the strength to confront the terrifying reality of what had been happening behind closed doors. There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought he had hung up. But then, I heard him exhale slowly. "I was hoping it wouldn't come to this. But you need to understand, I did this to protect you. To protect Jamie. You think you want the truth, but there are some things that are better left buried. I'm trying to keep you both safe from forces you can't even begin to comprehend." His words felt like a slap in the face. Was he trying to manipulate me, or was he truly this far gone, caught in some kind of twisted game where the stakes were life and death? I couldn't tell anymore. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to take Jamie and disappear, to end this before it escalated any further. But I couldn't bring myself to leave without answers. If I ran now, if I took the easy way out, I would never forgive myself for not fighting for the truth. But there was no easy way out. The ultimatum had been given, and I was forced to make a choice. Jamie's safety or the truth. What could I live with? What would I regret more? It was a decision that would haunt me forever, no matter which path I chose. And just as I was about to speak again, to demand more answers, the doorbell rang. I froze. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Whoever was at the door wasn't here for a friendly chat. This was it. The moment I had been dreading had arrived. The choice had been made for me, and now I had to face whatever came next. The truth, or the cost of discovering it. The doorbell rang again, louder this time, insistent, as if it were trying to tear the very air around me. My breath caught in my chest, a cold shiver running down my spine. I looked at the phone in my hand, the silence on the other end almost deafening now. It was like the world had stopped, suspended in a single moment, and in that instant, everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, my safety, felt like a lie. There was no escaping what was coming. No way to go back to the life I'd known before. This wasn't just about protecting Jamie anymore, this was about survival. And the truth had never seemed more dangerous. I set the phone down, my heart pounding as I walked cautiously toward the front door. Every step felt like it took an eternity, the air growing heavier with each passing second. I could feel the presence of someone outside, and the creeping realization that this wasn't just a random visit, that this wasn't something I could brush off as a simple misunderstanding, made my pulse race. My hand hovered over the doorknob. I knew I couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. Whatever was on the other side of that door, whatever was waiting for me, had the power to change everything. I turned the knob slowly, bracing myself, and swung the door open. But what I saw on the other side made my stomach drop. Standing there was someone I never expected to see, Claire. But she wasn't the same person I had known. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear, and there was something about the way she held herself, nervous, almost broken, that immediately sent a ripple of dread through my body. Before I could say anything, before I could demand answers, she shoved something into my hands, an envelope, thick with papers. "They're coming for you," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I couldn't warn you in time, but they know everything now. They're already on their way." She glanced over her shoulder nervously, as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. "You need to trust me. They're everywhere. You don't understand what's at stake. It's bigger than you think. Bigger than anyone could ever imagine." I felt my chest tighten as I took the envelope from her, every muscle in my body tensed as though waiting for something awful to happen. "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my voice low and desperate. "Who's coming for me? What's going on, Claire? I don't have time for cryptic warnings. You have to tell me the truth, everything." She glanced around one more time, her expression wild. "The family, the heir, the secrets, all of it. It's not just your husband. It's not just them. It's everyone." She choked on the words as though they were too heavy to say aloud. "This goes far beyond anything you could have imagined. There are people in power, big power, involved in this. They're the ones behind all of it. They've been pulling the strings for years. Your husband, he's just a pawn in their game." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. I stumbled backward, the weight of her confession almost too much to bear. It wasn't just my family caught up in this mess, it was something larger, something more sinister. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. My own husband, a man I had trusted above all else, was just a pawn in someone else's game. The betrayal stung deeper than anything I'd ever felt. "But Claire, I trusted you," I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me earlier? Why?" I cut myself off as she stepped closer, gripping my arm tightly, her eyes wide with desperation. "I tried. I couldn't. They were watching me, they are everywhere," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, but I couldn't get to you in time. They've been tracking you. Watching your every move. Everything you've uncovered. They've known about it for months." I shook my head, trying to process what she was telling me. Everything I'd done, everything I'd uncovered. They had known it all along. I didn't have time to process any more of it before the sound of a car engine roaring to life outside broke through the chaos of my mind. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and the tension in the air became suffocating. Claire's eyes flickered toward the driveway, and then she yanked me back inside, slamming the door behind us. "They're here," she whispered urgently. You need to get out. Now. I wanted to argue, to demand more answers, but the pounding of footsteps on the porch drowned out any chance I had to speak. Someone was coming for me. Someone was coming to silence me. I took a step back, my pulse quickening, but Claire wasn't done yet. She handed me the envelope, and I ripped it open in a panic, pulling out the papers inside. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely make sense of the text, but then my eyes froze on a name at the top of one of the documents. It was familiar, too familiar. My husband's name. But beneath it, there was something even more shocking, a list of names. A long list. And among those names was a name I never thought I would see there, Claire's name. My heart stopped as I realized what this meant. Claire hadn't been trying to protect me. She hadn't been warning me from the outside, she had been part of this all along. She had been working with them. She had known everything. I looked up at her, disbelief written across my face. What is this, Claire? What's going on? She backed away from me slowly, her face a mix of guilt and fear. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the car engines outside. I never wanted you to get caught up in this. I never wanted it to go this far. I felt the ground beneath me shift. My world was crumbling. I had trusted her, and now, in this moment, I realized that every step I had taken to uncover the truth had been manipulated. I didn't know who I could trust anymore. I didn't know what was real. Then the door slammed open with a force that made me jump, and I turned to face the figure standing in the doorway. It was my husband. But he wasn't the man I thought I knew. His eyes were hard, his expression cold. And behind him, in the shadow of the doorway, were several men I didn't recognize but who clearly had no interest in making friends. Did you think you could just walk away from this? My husband's voice was cold, empty. You've already gone too far. Now you have to finish what you started. I felt the weight of his words settle over me like a heavy blanket of dread. This was it. The truth had finally been laid bare, and it was bigger, darker, and more dangerous than I had ever imagined. And now, there was no escaping it. There was no running. They had me cornered. But it wasn't just my safety at risk anymore. Jamie's future, our future, was in their hands, and I had to decide how far I was willing to go to protect it. I had already made too many sacrifices, but now the stakes were higher than I could ever have imagined. The truth, the family secrets, the hidden past, it was all culminating in this moment, and I knew that whatever happened next would change everything forever. Everything came to a head in that moment. The door slammed open, the dark figures in the doorway, the heavy, suffocating tension in the room. My heart was pounding so loudly in my chest that I thought for a second it might burst, but there was no time for panic. The truth was unraveling before my eyes, and everything I had fought for, the safety of my daughter, the hope of answers, the desire for peace, was slipping through my fingers like sand. My husband stood in the doorway, his eyes cold and emotionless, a far cry from the man I once knew. Behind him, two men I didn't recognize flanked his sides, their expressions stern, unmoving. They didn't belong to any world I knew, but they were clearly here to make sure nothing got in the way of whatever plan had been set in motion. Claire, standing behind me, had already started to back away, her face pale, guilt written all over it. She had known, she had been part of this. Part of the conspiracy, the lies, the entire web I had been blindly walking into. The betrayal stung harder than anything else. But now wasn't the time to process that. Now was the time to survive. You think you can just expose everything and walk away? My husband's voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried a menace that made my blood run cold. You've already come too far. It's too late for you to turn back now. I stepped back instinctively, glancing around the room for anything I could use as a weapon, but there was nothing but the knowledge that I was standing on the edge of a precipice, and one wrong move would send me tumbling into a world of darkness I might never return from. What's going on? I forced the words out, barely recognizing my own voice. What is all this? Who are they? Why are you doing this? Every question felt like a knife in the dark, hoping one of them would strike true, hoping one of them would unlock the secret I had spent so long searching for. He didn't answer right away. He stepped into the room slowly, the men behind him following, their eyes never leaving me. You wouldn't understand, he said finally, his gaze hardening. "You never understood what was at stake. All of this, it was never about us. It was always about them. I didn't need to ask who they were. I already knew. The powerful forces, the ones whose names had appeared in the documents Claire had given me, the people who had orchestrated this entire charade. My husband wasn't just a pawn in their game. He was a player. A willing participant. The veil I'd tried to lift had only revealed more lies, and the truth that had remained hidden for so long was more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. Claire spoke then, her voice shaking, as if she could no longer bear the weight of what had been revealed. "I tried to warn you. I didn't want to get you involved, but you kept digging. You didn't stop. Now they're coming after you, and they won't stop until they get what they want." The words echoed in my mind. The last few months, the endless questions, the sleepless nights, all leading up to this. And then, in that moment, it hit me everything I had uncovered had been part of the plan all along. The clues, the mysterious messages, the seemingly innocent steps that had led me down this path. I wasn't just being dragged into something. I was a part of it. The reason they were targeting me, the reason I had been chosen. It all clicked into place. My daughter, Jamie, was the key. I turned to Claire, my eyes wild with realization. "It's Jamie, isn't it? That's what this is all about. She's the one they want. She's the heir." Claire's face was a mask of guilt, her lips trembling as she nodded slowly. "I never wanted this for you, but you were too deep in it to stop. You have to understand, this isn't something we can escape from. It's bigger than all of us. They'll never let you take her away. They'll never let her go." I felt my breath catch in my throat as the final piece of the puzzle locked into place. Jamie, my daughter, was part of something I couldn't even begin to understand. This whole time, I thought I was protecting her from the truth. But the truth was that Jamie had been born into this conspiracy, and her life was the price that would be paid if I tried to expose it all. Before I could process this new wave of panic, a sharp sound sliced through the tension in the room, the unmistakable ring of my cell phone, vibrating violently on the kitchen counter. I froze, knowing deep down that it wasn't a random call. It was them. Whoever they were. Whoever had been pulling the strings from the shadows. I had no choice but to answer. I snatched the phone from the counter, my hand shaking as I pressed it to my ear. "Hello." A calm, almost chilling voice came through the speaker. "It's time. You have two choices, and only two. You can hand over Jamie, and we'll leave you and your family alone. Or, you keep fighting, and we'll make sure that everything you've worked for, everything you've ever cared about, will disappear in the blink of an eye. And when we're done with that, we'll come after her. You're already in too deep, and there's no way out." My heart thundered in my chest, the air growing impossibly thick. I wasn't just fighting for my own survival anymore. I was fighting for Jamie's life, and I knew, without a doubt, that I couldn't afford to lose her. But to give in, to hand her over, to let them win, felt like the ultimate betrayal. The phone went silent, the decision hanging between us, the weight of it crushing me. But before I could think, before I could make the impossible choice they had forced me into, I heard a soft sound from behind me. A shuffle of feet. A breath. And then, I turned, and in that moment, everything shattered. Claire was gone. She had vanished, just like that. 1 second, she was standing there beside me, the next, there was nothing but a faint trail of her footsteps leading out the back door. But more than that, more than the shock of her disappearance, was the realization that my own husband wasn't moving. He wasn't reacting. He was standing there, watching me, and something in his eyes had shifted. Something cold, something darker, had replaced the man I thought I knew. And then it hit me like a punch to the gut, he was the one who had betrayed me all along. He had orchestrated it, using me, using Jamie, to fulfill whatever twisted plan was at the heart of this conspiracy. Claire had been a pawn, and so had I. As the room seemed to close in on me, the men behind my husband shifted their weight, their eyes now focused on me, and I understood. The true scale of the conspiracy wasn't just about one family, it was about something far bigger. Something dangerous. And now, I was at the center of it, caught in a storm I couldn't escape. I glanced one last time at the door, at the empty space where Claire had been moments before, and realized there was no way out. No safe place. The truth was out there, but the cost of uncovering it might be too high to pay. As the world around me seemed to tilt, as everything I thought I knew shattered into a million pieces, I made the only choice I had left. I would fight. Not for myself, not even for my husband, but for Jamie. For the chance to save her from the monsters that had hidden in plain sight all this time. And then, just as the door slammed shut behind me, I heard the soft click of a gun being cocked. The days that followed felt like a blur, a whirlwind of events I could barely keep up with, let alone process. After the gunshot, the violent, gut-wrenching noise that had nearly shattered everything in that moment, I thought it was over. I thought my life, our lives, were about to be torn apart in the most brutal way imaginable. But then, somehow, everything stopped. The world paused. And in that eerie silence, I realized I had survived. I had escaped the clutches of whatever dark forces had held me captive for so long. But survival came at a cost. That much was certain. It wasn't just my safety that had been threatened, it was Jamie's. And for a moment, I thought I had lost her. I thought she had slipped through my fingers, just as Claire had. But when the dust finally settled, when the chaos faded into something almost surreal, I found her. She was waiting for me, sitting quietly in the small, dimly lit room we had fled to, her innocent eyes wide with confusion. She didn't understand what had happened. She didn't know how close we had come to losing everything. But she was safe. For now, at least. The documents Claire had handed me, the ones that had revealed the conspiracy in all its terrible glory, were burned. Every last shred of evidence was gone, lost in the flames that had swallowed the truth, erasing any traces of the web that had entangled my family. But the truth was still inside me, still gnawing at my bones, waiting to escape. I had learned enough to know that this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. There were still too many unanswered questions, too many pieces of the puzzle left scattered in the dark corners of this nightmare. My husband, the man, had disappeared. Gone, like a ghost. I never saw him again. And I would never understand his reasons, his choices, or the depths of his betrayal. I wanted to believe that there was some part of him that still loved me, still cared about our family, but as I looked back on everything, I knew I could never look at him the same way again. The man I had spent years building a life with wasn't the same man standing in that doorway, threatening me, using me. I could never unsee that look in his eyes, the cold, calculated gaze that had revealed everything about who he really was. But as the weeks turned into months, I realized that my fight wasn't over. The conspiracy I had uncovered was only one small piece of a far bigger picture. The people behind it, the powerful ones, hadn't stopped. They were still out there, watching, waiting, always one step ahead. I didn't know if I would ever be able to take them down. I didn't know if I had the strength or the courage to keep going. But I couldn't stop now. Not when Jamie was still in danger. Not when there was so much left to uncover. I had promised myself that I would protect her. And I would. No matter the cost. But the hardest part, the part that haunted me in the quiet hours of the night, was the knowledge that the conspiracy went deeper than I ever could have imagined. The people involved, the families, the generations of secrecy, all of it was part of something much darker, much older, than anything I could have prepared for. And as I looked into Jamie's eyes, trying to comfort her, to assure her that everything would be okay, I couldn't help but wonder, was I too late? Had I already failed her? The questions lingered, echoing in the back of my mind like a broken record. I tried to push them away, to focus on the present, on the small, quiet moments I had left with her, the days that felt almost normal, almost safe. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. One evening, as I tucked Jamie into bed, her little face soft with sleep, I caught a glimpse of something on the floor. A small, folded piece of paper, half hidden under the edge of the rug. My heart skipped a beat. I had burned everything, destroyed every trace of the evidence I had uncovered. There was no way this could be here. But there it was, this single, innocuous slip of paper, a reminder that the darkness was never truly gone. I bent down slowly, picking it up with trembling hands, and opened it. The message was simple, but the words felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. You haven't seen the last of us. The room seemed to close in around me. My breath caught in my throat, my hands shaking as I read the words again. Who had left this? Was it a warning? A threat? And why now, after everything we'd been through? Had they been watching us all along? I stared at the paper for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing, my heart hammering in my chest. This wasn't over. I had thought it was. I had hoped that by hiding, by running, we could finally escape it all. But I had been wrong. There was more to this story. And whatever I had uncovered so far was just the tip of the iceberg. I placed the paper down carefully, trying to steady my breath, but even as I did, a sense of finality washed over me. The pieces of the puzzle were still scattered, still missing, and they were all connected in ways I couldn't yet understand. The conspiracy, the lies, the secrets, it was all part of something bigger, something much more dangerous than I had ever thought possible. As I looked down at Jamie, her peaceful face illuminated by the soft light of the night, I knew one thing for sure: no matter what came next, I would fight. For her. For the truth. For whatever pieces of this shattered story I could still gather. But as the quiet of the night pressed in, I also knew that the battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. The mystery wasn't finished. And in some ways, I realized that it never truly would be. And just as I was about to turn off the light, a single thought hit me like a thunderclap. Who was watching us now?